Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Kingdom Conversations podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Pastor Terry. You're with us. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good.
Good.
Good. Glad to be joining.
Yes. What are you drinking today?
I'm drinking tea. This
Nice.
is Constant Comment with a little bit of honey.
Constant
Okay, it's-
Comment?
Comment.
Comment. Okay. So is it black tea? Or?
It is. It's a black tea. It has a
Okay.
little bit of orange in it, and
It smells delicious.
yeah, and it has a lot of honey in it.
A lot
Not
of
just
honey.
a little.
It needs
has
to
a
be
lot.
sweet.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's good. It looks like I'm drinking coffee, but it's an energy
Are you
drink.
faking it?
It's an energy drink.
Okay.
The can was just not aesthetically pleasing. I mean, it was, but it didn't match this vibe, so I
That's
figured
right.
I would put it in a coffee cup. So
Okay.
that'll be our fuel today. But we are talking about leadership. We're talking
Yeah.
about the next generation and how we can learn from past generations. And really, the point of it all is to honor one another, right?
That's right.
Between generations. And so I'm super excited to dive in. I know I have a lot to learn from you, and you've said that you can learn something from me,
Absolutely.
I guess. So
Absolutely.
we'll see what I can do. But hopefully
Good.
we can learn from each other throughout this conversation. And I'm
Always.
just excited. I mean, really, I think anyone benefits from learning about leadership, right? We
That's
all
right.
have the ability to be leaders.
Yeah.
We're called to be leaders as
That's
Christ
right.
followers, right? And so just to kind of give us a baseline as we're having this conversation, what does it look like to be a leader? Who is or should be a leader?
I think anyone who has the ability to influence someone else
Yeah.
is a leader.
Yeah.
At various degrees, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but parents influencing their children.
Mm-hmm. It's a big
they're
one.
they're leading in
Yeah.
that capacity, and I think just about anybody that influences
Mm-hmm.
someone, and I think it goes deep. You said who should be. I think people of good character,
Yeah.
people who have learned what it is to have something to give
Mm-hmm.
to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And those are not only the leaders we want to be as individuals, but also the
Yeah.
leaders that we want to follow.
yeah,
You know, like it's so easy, you mentioned the word influence. There's a lot of people in this world, especially in this day and age, that have a lot of influence, right? They have
That's
millions
right.
of followers online. They have a lot of people
It's
that
actually a
know
name
them.
now.
Yeah, influencers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's
and
with that?
they make so much money just like posting videos of their life and what they buy at Target and
I
all
know.
sorts of things,
I
right?
know.
So there's different versions of influence, right?
Right.
But what we're really talking about is influence in the right ways.
That's right.
And influencing people, really, as Christ followers, we're influencing them to also be a disciple of Jesus.
That's right.
And so it's important that we are those leaders, and then we also choose those leaders to follow.
Yeah.
Because we really have to be intentional about who we follow, right? Because
We do.
that also influences what kind of leader we are. We kind
Yeah.
of become the leaders, that's why we're so much like whoever raised us. That's a big part of who we are.
That's right.
And the people, the spiritual leaders in our lives, like that influences who you become in some dramatic ways.
Yeah. And at this
yeah.
point in my life, I'm extremely grateful
Mm-hmm.
for those people
Yeah.
in my life, that
Absolutely.
have really poured into me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this really, we've kind of mentioned how it intersects leadership with our spiritual walk.
Right.
Right. So what does that really look like for our leadership to intersect with our spiritual walk? And how do we be good spiritual leaders?
I think humility is kind of a base.
Yeah.
We kind of have to start there. I just have gone through in my personal devotions the Last Supper.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've just gone through Holy Week, and that whole story of Jesus coming to his disciples. They're in a room where they're talking about who's going to be the greatest in God's kingdom. And they're arguing about it,
Yeah.
and Jesus says to them, that they need to be servant leaders. And he says, let me demonstrate to you. And he gets up and takes a towel and starts washing their feet because nobody did that for each other. And I think humility is really at the core of how to be a servant leader.
Yeah.
And really, if we don't do it that way, I think it goes to that character side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where the good character comes in.
Yeah.
And motivation. When you were sharing that, I'm just thinking, okay, what are my motivations as a leader?
Yeah.
Am I leading just so that I can have power over somebody or something?
Right.
Am I leading just so that I can have a lot of followers and feel like I'm popular, or whatever the bad motivations could be for being a leader? Or am I leading because I love people and I want to serve
right.
people and I want to ultimately serve God
Yeah.
through that leadership? So motivation is such a key element there with that humility.
You talked about, how's that intersect with our spiritual life?
Yeah.
So I was looking in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 2 starts off, and this is spiritual leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And both of us are. We're in that role where we influence people in a spiritual way.
Yeah.
And it says, care for the flock that God has entrusted you. Watch over it willingly, not grudgingly, not for what you will get out of it, because you're eager to serve God.
Yeah.
That's your motivation. You're eager to serve God.
Yeah.
And don't lord it over the people assigned to your care, but lead them by your good example. So you start with that good example. And then it goes on and it says, and in the same way, you who are younger must accept the authority of the elders, and all of you dress yourself in humility as you relate to one another. So, yeah, I know we're going to talk about this younger, older thing here in a minute, but thing that I always love about Scripture is it never just throws it out and says, you do this and you do this. It says, yeah, you need to respect this, but, and then it'll throw it back for both of us.
Yeah.
And it just did that. We both have to respect each other. We both have to honor each other.
Yeah. And we both have to live with that in mind, right?
Yeah.
That we're going to respect each other, but then we're also going to do what we are called to do.
That's right.
And show up and do our part so that we can work in harmony with one another, right?
I know.
That's what God calls us to do as Christ followers, is to live in harmony with one another, to serve with one another in that way. And I love that verse, how it talks about being eager to serve the Lord, right?
Yeah.
That's where it all comes from, right? If we're not eager to serve the Lord, then we're going to be really flippant about our leadership.
That's right.
Or we're going to be really gung-ho for the wrong reasons.
I know.
Right? And I think most people have experienced really healthy leadership and probably some moments of really unhealthy leadership. And that's really what it comes down to, is that verse used the words lord it over. You know, like you're kind of like in charge of them, right? Like you will do this because I'm your pastor and you're going to do it because I told you to, right?
Command and control.
Right. Having that unhealthy use of power, like a power trip. We kind of use that language, like, man, they're on a power trip, right?
Yeah.
That's not the kind of leader that I want to be.
No.
And no healthy leader wants to be.
Nor one I want to follow.
No, certainly not.
Right.
It's not fun to follow a leader like that. So.
Right.
Yeah, and you brought up kind of that dynamic of mature leaders versus young leaders and how we can work together.
Yeah.
I want to really kind of break this down into segments. And so let's start with that young leader, the next generation, right? We believe in the next generation here at Sound Life.
Absolutely.
We believe in young leaders. We believe in them stepping out and learning and growing as leaders, becoming pastors and business people that are leading spiritually, all the things. And so how can young leaders balance stepping out into that new territory of leadership while also knowing the real limits of their experience or maturity? Like there's that moment where you have to just step out and do something, and so sometimes it's like, is now the healthy time to step out and do this?
Yeah, there's a couple of things with that. I think, as we read through Proverbs a lot, and you even find it some in Psalms, but in Proverbs it talks about us being ready to receive good godly counsel, surrounding ourselves with people that have wisdom. And I think that's a starting point.
Yeah.
And having accountability, having the ability to bounce things off of someone and just kind of say, hey, what do you think? I'm thinking about this. How does that resonate with you? And be able to do it. And then I think the next step is you're not going to know how to grow or whether it worked or not unless you actually do it.
True. Yeah.
So after you've got all your advice and you think you know what to do, then I think you're going to have to just step out and lead.
Right. Yeah.
And see where that takes you.
And lead in healthy ways, right? Like
Absolutely.
I'm not going to graduate college and then go become a lead pastor somewhere and, just dive into the deep end, right? I'm going to go in healthy ways.
You would hope that you didn't have to.
Yeah, I would hope that I wouldn't have to or be asked to.
Yeah,
and having those healthy safety nets, right? Like we have the people, the accountable, people that we're accountable to. We have the mature leaders who we can seek that wisdom and counsel from as we lead.
That's great about being part of a team like we are.
Yeah, we have that. Absolutely.
We're part of a fantastic team.
Yeah.
as pastors. And I love our administrative team and all of that.
Yeah.
Because we get a chance to speak into each other's lives and help each other.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's like, man, especially for me, I'm, pretty new to this whole thing. And so being able to have somebody like you or, any of our pastors that I'm able to go to and say, hey, I've never dealt with this before. So this is what I'm thinking. This is how I am thinking or planning to deal with the situation. Am I thinking about this correctly?
Yeah, that's
Are there
good.
things that you've already learned about scenarios like this that you would tell me before I make the same mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And so that's just so helpful, but it doesn't happen unless we're willing to say, hey, I'm new to this, I'm learning, I'm willing to step out and have these hard conversations or do these things that are uncharted territory for me, but I'm going to do it in a healthy way that leans into experience and maturity of others, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's helpful too. I mean, there's things that we're all, times are changing and there's things still in ministry that you've yet to experience, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so we brainstorm and do the things together, right?
We do, and I think a healthy thing from my perspective as the older team member is giving some of the background that I have, giving some of the experience that I have, and having people respect that. That's wonderful. But I also need to be in a position where I need to step back and let you lead. And some people aren't really able to do that. It seems like it's difficult for them anyway.
Right.
But how else are you going to learn how to lead if somebody doesn't open a door and say, "Here it is, go lead"?
Right.
I'm behind you all the way. I'll help you. I'll encourage you. I'll support you. But you're going to be the lead on this.
Right. And that's really, the hard part of just getting out and doing it, right? Like you were saying, you can't just read something and be an expert and then go out and do it, right? The real lessons of life are learned by doing it and having that hands-on experience. That's why, shameless plug for our internship program.
That's
here,
right.
Sound Life internship.
That's right.
There's such a difference between going to school and learning from a textbook versus being able to have that hands-on experience, right? That's what I did, and I learned so much as an intern and continue to learn things as people like you give me the opportunities to step out and do things that might be the first time I've done it, but I'd rather do it now when you're behind me doing it than to do it on my own later, right? And you're there to help me when I'm working through things and making mistakes together, right? And learning from them and growing out of them. And so that's such a huge thing of like, put yourself in positions where you have that safety net and you're going to step out and you're going to do those new things and try new things and go to that uncharted territory as a leader and do it with those people behind you, backing you up, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's, like you were saying, the hard part is letting go sometimes, and, it's probably scary. I would, putting myself in your shoes, like understanding, when you let a young leader in and they go out, like you're responsible for what they're doing too as the older leader. And so there's some, understanding of, hey, you're going to lead me and you're going down with me, and you're going to help me when we make mistakes and
but
stuff.
We've already talked about that as a parent.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing.
Totally.
We raise our kids to be responsible citizens in the community they live in, however that looks. We raise them to do it, and when it comes time, we need to step out of the way and let them do it.
Right.
Be that person, supportive, but let them do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing.
Same thing. Yeah, we got to just be willing to fly the nest and practice. It's scary, but it's also healthy.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to just be willing to step out into that. I love 1 Timothy 4:12. It says, "Don't let anyone think less of you because you are young." Normally we kind of stop there. Like as a young leader, I've heard so many other young people kind of put that in maybe some older people's face. Like, don't look down on me because I'm young. Remember, I'm young, but don't look down on me. But that's not the end of the verse,
that's
right?
Insecurity,
so
right
that's
there.
the insecurity,
that
and maybe
exactly
sometimes pride. Maybe sometimes pride
a little,
too, a little mix.
Yeah.
But I love how it finishes this verse. It says, "But be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way you live, in your love, your faith, and your purity."
Yeah.
So really living this out, it's not saying like you should just put that in people's faces and tell them don't look down on me because of my age, right? It's take the responsibility as a young person to set an example, to live a life that is above reproach, that I'm not going to live flippantly like, oh, I'm just 24, I'm going to go live my life however a 24-year-old of this world should. I'm going to live not based on what the world says I should in my age, but I'm going to live in the spiritual maturity that God has called me to. So then people can't legitimately look down on me because I'm young, but they're going to be able to lift me up into those leadership opportunities because of the way that I'm setting that example to all believers.
It goes back to character, Amy.
It absolutely does.
When it says here that you need to live your life in love, faith, and purity, that's character. It's how I treat you, and that's character. It's how I believe I should live my life, and how I treat you is birthed out of that.
And it's relationship, right? All of this comes down to relationship.
It does.
Leadership is just an aspect of living in relationship. And so how are we living not only from a platform or from, a place of leadership, right? As a leader, I don't just live in these ways when I'm on the clock, right? I don't just live in these ways when I'm in the office here at the church or on a Sunday morning in the lobby. I have to live this way with my parents at home. I have to live this way at the grocery store on my day off, right? I live this way not just because it's part of my job description or my leadership description, but it's part of my character of who I am as a person.
Yeah, there are things that I do and in my relationship with Cynthia. And on occasion, she has asked me the question, are you practicing on me? And I'll pause and kind of, sometimes I'll say yes, absolutely, because this is what I want to be.
Right.
This is who I want to be. And I think sometimes we have to practice that and try that out. And how does this work in real life? And do that.
Yeah. And really, all of life is a big practice, right? Like we're learning and growing and, trying new tactics. And there's never a moment when we've made it in life, right? We're always going to be learning. Whether it's fundamental things like faith, love, purity, like there's always a new element of that in our lives that we can grow into. And so I love that idea of practicing, right? Like we're just in a constant state of practicing and implementing these leadership skills, this character that we want to be as a leader.
Yeah. So
that's so good. I love the wisdom that you bring. You're one of the mature leaders on our team. And
does that mean old?
No. You're young, Terry. You're a young, mature, cool pastor, okay?
I'm a young old guy.
Yeah, exactly. But you have a lot of wisdom, and you've lived a lot of, ministry out. You've been a minister since you graduated college, right? You've been involved in that. So from your perspective, how can mature leaders continue to grow, right? So young leaders, it's like chomping at the bit, trying to continue to grow and step into new things. Then you do that and you start to grow into that and it becomes a normal part of your life and being a leader is normal, and then it's like the tendency is to plateau and to just settle for what you already have, who you already are. How do you stay constant in that battle to grow as a mature leader?
You have to continue to work hard and you have to be hungry.
Yeah.
Hungry to continue to grow. That if that passion and drive ever leaves, then it's not good. You got to reevaluate what's going on or get out. But I think you've got to have that. And I think along with that, you need to constantly have a mentor accountability side of life.
Yeah.
It may not be that I need some mentors to help me learn what this next stage of life's all about, because it's totally different for me now.
Yeah.
And we're taking care of Cynthia's mom right now, who is 94 and has dementia, and I am learning in this process. And I have to go to people and say, how do I navigate this part of my life?
Yeah.
And I have to learn, I have to grow. But I think accountability is also part of it, to be able to say, how am I doing? Am I still working hard? Am I still hungry for things? Am I growing? How can I do better?
Yeah.
Those kind of things. It's no different really for a young leader than an older leader. You still have to grow.
Right.
It still has to be part of it.
And I love those two words. So we started with humility and being humble, a humble leader. But then now we're also talking about being a hungry leader.
That's right.
And I think so often we feel like we have to be one or the other, and we can't have both, right? Like I'm going to be a humble leader, so I'm just going to sit back. I'm not going to ask for opportunities. I'm not going to ask for leadership or influence. I'm just going to be humble. stay to the wayside and live my life in that
Right.
probably false humility is really what that is. And then hungry, it's like, no, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to like, we could go to the opposite end of power trip in
Yeah.
that realm, right? Of
Yeah.
just gung-ho, going crazy as a leader. And so when we marry those two together, that's when I think we really start to get somewhere, right?
Yeah.
That we're going to go after things. We're going to be the people that charge forward with the vision and the mission of God and his
Right.
kingdom. But then we're also going to be humble, knowing that we're stewarding what God has given us. We're
Yeah.
not the owner of it.
That's right.
We're
That's
the
right.
servant of God. We're eager to serve God,
Exactly.
just like that verse said.
Yeah.
Not trying to serve ourselves or our ego or our whatever. We're
No
trying to
matter
serve.
our age.
No matter our age.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah. And staying in that place from the beginning all the way to the end of the race, right?
I know.
That's the goal.
And it ebbs and flows a little bit. I mean, I can tell you just from experience, it does. And you have to have resets.
Yeah.
Because if you don't reset, you can plateau. You can't even decline. And so resets are really necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, Pastor Terry, you are one of our, like I've said, one of our mature, wise leaders on our team. And then I happen to be the youngest pastor on our team. So
That's
we've kind
right.
of got both
Right.
sides of our team represented
Right.
here in this conversation. And so I'd love for us, as we kind of wrap up
Yeah.
today's episode, just for you to kind of give your advice, what you would say to a young leader like myself and many others. And then I'll kind of share from the young leader perspective
Okay.
to, the older generation that's leading us into leadership.
Yeah.
So you start us off.
Stay hungry.
Yeah.
First thing, stay hungry. And find a mentor. Make sure that, even if it's, someone who's just a little farther down the road than you, find somebody in that way that you can listen, be accountable to somebody, be willing to learn and put it into practice. Don't be afraid to step out.
Yeah.
And from my perspective as an older leader, to be able to say, respect with us goes a long ways. To be able to honor who we are and the fact that we do have a few things to bring to the table still. We may not understand TikTok, but we understand some other stuff. So
Yeah.
there are some things that we can be involved with and you can apply it in the appropriate way in your setting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think it's important that we work together, through our, different gifts and different places, seasons of life that we're
Right.
in, right? And so we honor that and respect that out of each other, but we also don't box each other in, right? Like,
No.
I'm not going to box you into that one, primetime ministry,
That's
like,
right.
I'm going to let you, because your voice is valuable to the students in youth ministry. Your voice is valuable to the kids in our kids ministry. Like, there's so many opportunities, and so it's important that we be careful both ways to not box each other in
Right.
based on life experience or season or whatever it might be, right?
Right.
And so I think from the young leader's perspective, just having that open dialogue, right, of being willing to, I think on the young leader to go and seek out that counsel, to seek out that wisdom,
Yeah.
whether it be from another leader on a team with you, or even, that person that could be kind of like a grandpa figure in your life, right?
Yeah.
Like, as young leaders, we have to go and seek that out and be willing to hear what they're actually going to say.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we have to implement it necessarily based on what it
Right.
is. We all have different styles of leadership and all that, but just being willing to go out and seek that out. And
Yeah.
so just encouragement along the way, right? Like, as young leaders, it's scary to be a young leader. It's scary to step out into that uncharted territory and do
Yeah.
things that seem really easy to you and I'm
Yeah.
just learning how to do it, right? And so
Right.
encouragement, noticing those things, right? Like, for a young leader, it might be one of the first times that we've stepped up and done that task or
Exactly.
led in that way or pastored and shepherded in that way.
Right.
But to you, it's like maybe something that's like an everyday occurrence. You've done it for years. It's normal, maybe something that you don't even think about because it's muscle memory,
Yeah.
right? And so it's so helpful both ways, but as the young leader, being able to have those mature leaders see that and notice, like, hey, I know that's not something that you've done before, and I saw that you did it. I saw that you sought out that advice and then took that and applied it and did it. noticing those things and having that open dialogue to win the things that are going well in their life, to win the ways that they're leading well as a young person, to call out the good, right? Because what we celebrate, we repeat.
Yeah.
And so celebrating those things in those young people. And then not being afraid to give that feedback, right? I've grown so much as a leader because of amazing feedback that I've gotten from the mature, leaders on our team.
Right.
And so it's things that it's like, man, that makes so much sense. And it helps me so much. I'll say like, hey, I'm really struggling with this aspect of speaking or this aspect of leading. And somebody will say, well, I think it's probably because of this. And it's like a light bulb goes off. It makes sense, but I just couldn't put words to it.
Right.
So
and yet they may not come to you originally and just say, hey, Amy, why don't you try this? Because I think you're struggling there.
Yeah.
I think the initiative needs to come from you to ask.
Absolutely.
Put yourself out and be vulnerable.
Yep. Yeah. Being vulnerable is key. And knowing that, the healthy, mature leaders are not going to look down on me because I'm young, right? No. Because they see that humility, they see that hunger, and people like you want to steward that as a leader of leaders.
Right.
And so being vulnerable is a lot easier when we know that there are leaders above us and ahead of us that want us to thrive and want us to do well. Not because we're in competition with one another. Like, I'm not on a team with you because I'm your replacement. I'm on a team with you because we work together in harmony with one another. And so that's, I think, the key in honoring all generations is that we're in this together. It's not you and then me. It's us together as a team playing together.
That's right.
And so it goes both ways, and it's wonderful when we all do our part.
That's right. I've even been on a team where I knew somebody was my replacement.
Wow.
But I also knew that I would be putting myself or being put into a situation where I would be doing something different. Mm-hmm. And so you need to look in those moments and just say, okay, I better help them so that they do the best they can do when they are me.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the mindset of, the young leader. It's important that we're not just bulldozing like, I want that place, so get out of my way. Right. But it's like, hey, I want to grow into that, so teach me and lift me up into that.
Yeah.
And then the mature leader is looking at it of, well, let me help you. Kind of like you were saying, like building those replacements. Like find somebody who you can train and lead to take your spot.
Absolutely.
And then you do the same. It's like a cycle, of we're all raising each other up into new levels. And, and we're doing it together. So it's awesome. Good. Yeah. Well, thank you for chatting. I hope this was helpful to everyone else. It's been great to talk it out. And it's important that we don't just talk about the kingdom, but we go out and be the kingdom. So have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Welcome, Sound Life Church. Hey, this is Pastor Sean, and I'm here with your parenting tip of the week. And I just want you to know that I'm not a perfect parent, but I do have the advantage of having the experience of working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids throughout my pastoral career. And we're just trying to give you little truths, little tidbits of truth that will help in encouraging good parenting. And so here you go. Here's another strategy that is important. Family dinner. And I know that things are busy. I know that it's hard. I know that there's all these things pressing in on your day. But getting together, even though it's difficult, make the time to sit, visit, and eat together, because it can do wonders for your parenting. And then I'll tell you this, there were different times in my life where that was difficult with my kids. But one of the things that I found is that, all right, if I can't do a family dinner, I could do a family breakfast. And so I knew that if I got downstairs before they woke up and I cooked breakfast, they could shovel it in fast and then be out the door if that's what they needed, or they could stay. And this is the thing I found. I found that many times, because of there being a hot breakfast down there, the kids paused and they were able to interact, and it helped them start off their day in a way where they knew that I was aware, they knew that I was supportive, and they knew that I was investing in them. And so I think those are all just great things. And then Jesus modeled this too. Communion is around a dinner table, and then also We have numbers of times where Jesus just had some fish around the campfire with his disciples. It's that time spent and that opportunity to have community. Don't take my word for it. I'm going to give you Ann Fishel, Executive Director of the Family Dinner Project. She says this: multiple studies over the past 20 years have shown that family dinners are great for the body, physical health, brain, academic performance, and the spirit or mental health. In terms of nutrition, cardiovascular health is better in people who participate in a family dinner. Now here's the deal, mental health. We hear all these facts. We have kids that have higher stress levels than ever before, and this is another byproduct of a family dinner. Then the mental health benefits are just incredible. Regular family dinners are associated with lower rates of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, eating disorders, tobacco use, early teen pregnancy, and higher rates of resilience and higher self-esteem. Here's the thing. We list off those things. We all want more of that in our family, right? We want our anxiety level down. We want depression down. We want joy. We want encouragement. We want all of those health benefits in our life. And here's the thing that I think why a time of family gathering shows value in your family. And it probably will benefit your kids and your wife. And so I just challenge you, carve out some time. If it's not at night, do it in the morning. Or even if you're like, hey, I can't do this, Sean. Try once a week on the weekend, Do something where you can have a family gathering, where you can learn about your kids, laugh about what's going on in their life, have them laugh at you, and just enjoy that community time. Connection is important. And even if they grumble initially, guess what? I heard my son's friends talk about the fact that, wow, your boys get hot breakfast. So even though they would grumble with me, they were giving it in a positive light to their friends. Remember, connection is the purpose.